Hello and welcome to the Vailrun Tapes. Every story here is true. It happened to a real person, and they wrote it down or said it out loud, so the rest of us would know. Tonight, I'll share a few of them with you. A lot of you come back here every night, and that means a lot to me. These stories stay with people. That's just what they do. Before we start, drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from tonight. I read all of them. And if you like these stories, a quick like and subscribe really help. Now get comfortable, take a slow breath, and let's begin.
About 2 or 3 a.m. One morning, me and my wife could not sleep, so we decided to take the dog for a walk. It was one of those nights where you are lying in bed for hours, tired but not actually able to drift off, and eventually, the house starts to feel too still. We lived out in the countryside at the time, so it was not like walking around a city or a busy neighborhood where there were always cars passing, people coming home late, or lights in the windows. Out there, when it got late, everything went quiet. The roads were dark, the fields were darker, and the only sounds were usually the wind, the occasional animal, and our own footsteps if we went outside. Taking the dog out at that hour was not something we did every night, but it was not impossible either. We figured a walk might clear our heads, give the dog a little exercise, and maybe help us get tired enough to sleep when we came back. The countryside feels different at that time of night. During the day, the same roads can feel peaceful, open, and familiar. You see the hedges, the trees, the fields, the farm entrances, and the little houses spread out here and there. You know where you are. But at 2 or 3 in the morning, all those same places lose their shape. The road ahead becomes a tunnel of darkness. The fields beside you turn into wide black spaces where anything could be standing just beyond what you can see. Every bend feels like it is hiding something. And even if you do not believe in anything strange, your mind starts filling in the dark. We had our dog with us, and that made us feel a bit safer. Dogs notice things before people do. They hear small sounds, smell things on the air, and react to movement we might miss. Usually, our dog was good on walks. She might be alert, especially that late at night, but she was not the kind of dog that would panic over nothing. If she growled, there was usually a reason for it. That became important later, because her reaction was what told us this was not just us being nervous in the dark. One road near where we lived had a church on it. It was not a huge church, but in the middle of the countryside, a church at night has a very specific feeling. In daylight, it was just part of the area, something you passed without thinking too much about. But at night, especially when the roads were empty and there were no people around, it looked different. Churches are supposed to feel safe, but when they are closed, silent, and surrounded by darkness, they can feel strangely lonely. We knew that church normally closed around 6 p.m., so by the time we were walking past at 2 or 3 in the morning, it should have been completely shut up and dark. But as we got closer, we noticed that a light was on inside. That immediately felt strange. At first, it was not terrifying, just odd enough to make us pause mentally. A church light being on in the middle of the night could have a normal explanation. Maybe someone had forgotten to turn it off. Maybe there had been an event earlier. Maybe a caretaker had been in and left quickly. Maybe there was a security light or some kind of automatic system. But because we knew the church was supposed to be closed from 6 p.m., seeing that light made the whole road feel different. It was like the building was awake when it should not have been. We kept walking, but both of us noticed it. There was something unsettling about seeing that glow coming from the church, while everything else around us was so dark. The light did not make the area feel safer. If anything, it drew attention to how empty the rest of the road was. It made the darkness around the building seem even thicker. The road curved near the church, and there was a dark corner in front of it. We could not see clearly around it until we got closer. That corner was just black, and the light from the church did not reach far enough to show what was there. Then, from around that dark corner in front of the church, a woman appeared. She came into view suddenly, not running or hurrying, just walking. She was wearing a full cloak, the kind of thing you do not expect to see someone wearing on a countryside road in the middle of the night. It covered her in a way that made her shape look old-fashioned and strange. Her face was extremely pale, almost unnaturally pale in the darkness, and she had a blank expression. Not tired, not angry, not upset, not surprised to see us. Just blank. That was one of the first things that made my stomach drop. If you meet someone walking at that hour, especially in a lonely place, you expect some kind of reaction. Even a quick glance, a small nod, a look of embarrassment, fear, or confusion. Something human. She had none of that. Our dog noticed her immediately. The dog became visibly concerned. Her body changed. She stiffened, her hackles went up, and she started growling. It was not a playful growl or a small, uncertain noise. It was a warning, the kind of reaction that makes you pay attention because the dog has decided something is wrong. In that moment, my wife and I were already uneasy, but when the dog reacted like that, our fear became real. Animals do not care about stories, superstition, or imagination. They react to what is in front of them. And our dog did not like this woman at all. Me and my wife were terrified, but we tried to stay calm. There was nowhere to go except to keep standing there and let the woman walk past. We did not want to make a scene. We did not want the dog to lunge or bark more. We were also trying to be polite, because part of your brain still wants to treat everything normally, even when your body is screaming that something is off. So as the woman came closer, we held on to the dog and kept our eyes on her. When she passed us, we apologized for the dog growling. That part still feels strange to me when I think about it. We were scared, our dog was clearly upset, and this woman had appeared from a dark corner near a closed church in the middle of the night, wearing a cloak with a pale blank face. But we still apologized. It was automatic. Sorry, or something like that, the way you apologize when your dog growls at someone on a normal walk. We were trying to make the moment human, trying to make it normal. She did not respond. She did not even turn her head. She just kept walking past us. That was the moment that made her feel less like an ordinary person. If someone's dog is growling at you in the middle of the night and the owners apologize, most people react somehow. They might look at the dog, say it is fine, give a nervous laugh, move farther away, or at least glance in your direction. She did nothing. Her head stayed facing forward. Her expression stayed blank. She did not speed up. She did not slow down. She just walked past like we were not there at all. We kept watching her because neither of us felt safe turning our backs. There was a tension in that moment that is hard to explain. The road was long and dark. The church light was still on. The dog was still unsettled. And this woman had just passed us without acknowledging us. We let her get by, but we did not relax. We were both nervous, and our dog was still worked up, so we looked down at her for a second to calm her. It was only a second. We were trying to soothe her, maybe tell her it was okay, maybe adjust the lead, anything to bring her back down. Then we turned back to look at the woman. She was gone, not farther down the road, not walking away in the distance. Gone, that was impossible. The road was long, and there were no turnings other than the end of the road, which was visible but far away. She could not have reached it in the time we looked at our dog. She had only just passed us. There was nowhere for her to duck into. No side path right there, no doorway, no gate, no alley, no hidden lane that we knew of. It was countryside, and the road was open enough that we should have seen her continuing away from us. But there was no sign of her cloak, no pale face, no movement, nothing. For a few seconds, I think both of us just stood there trying to understand what we were looking at. Our brains kept searching for a normal answer because that is what brains do. Maybe she had moved faster than we realized. Maybe she had stepped off the road. Maybe there was a gap in a hedge or a driveway we had not noticed. Maybe the darkness had swallowed her shape. But none of it made sense. The end of the road was visible, and it was far away. She had not had enough time to get there. She could not have disappeared into thin air, but that was exactly what it looked like. The dog's reaction made it worse. If we had been alone, maybe we could have told ourselves we were tired, that the hour made everything feel strange, that we were half asleep and spooked by a woman walking at night. But the dog had reacted before we fully did. She had seen or sensed something that made her growl and raise her hackles. She had been genuinely disturbed. That stayed with us because animals often react to things people try to ignore. We did not keep walking like normal after that. The whole night felt wrong. The church light, the woman in the cloak, the pale face, the blank expression, the dog growling, the way she ignored us completely, and then the way she vanished from a road where she should have still been visible. It all added up too quickly. We were no longer two people taking a late-night walk because we could not sleep. We were two people standing in the countryside at 3 in the morning, realizing we had just seen something we could not explain. Later, we messaged the church to ask if they had been open the night before. It seemed like the most practical thing to do. Maybe there had been some late-night service, prayer meeting, maintenance, or emergency. Maybe someone had been inside, and the woman was connected to that. If the church had been open, the light would make sense. If the light made sense, maybe the woman would make more sense too. We did not want to sound crazy, so we kept it simple and asked about it. The church told us they had been closed all night. They were also concerned to hear that the lights had been on. That response made everything worse. If they had been open, we could have tried to build a normal explanation around it. Someone left the church, a woman walked away, maybe we missed where she went. But the church being closed meant the light should not have been on at all. The people connected to the church did not brush it off. They were concerned, which meant it was not normal for that light to be on in the middle of the night. That detail turned the whole experience from strange to deeply unsettling. I still think about the timing. We could not sleep, so we went out at 2 or 3 in the morning. We took the dog. We walked down the road with the church, noticed the light on even though it should have been closed, and then a cloaked woman with a pale, blank face came out from the darkness in front of it. She ignored us, ignored the growling dog, walked past, and disappeared in the time it took us to look down for a moment. Then the church confirmed they had been closed all night and did not know why the light was on. There are possible explanations, of course. Maybe someone forgot the light. Maybe someone had access to the church and went in without others knowing. Maybe the woman was a real person who knew the area and slipped into a path we did not notice. Maybe we misjudged how long we looked away. Maybe the darkness made distance confusing. Those are the kinds of things people say because they are reasonable. And maybe one of them is true. But standing there that night, with our dog growling and the road empty where the woman should have been, it did not feel reasonable. It felt wrong. What stays with me most is her face. Pale, blank, and completely uninterested in us. She did not act startled to see 2 people and a dog in the middle of the night. She did not react to the growling. She did not accept our apology or even acknowledge it. She just walked past like she had already decided we did not matter. That kind of blankness is more frightening than anger sometimes. If she had been angry, at least it would have felt human. If she had looked frightened, we might have felt sorry for her. But she looked like nothing. Empty, like she was only passing through. The countryside road was not a place where someone could vanish easily. That is the part I always come back to. In a city, a person can disappear around a corner, into a doorway, behind a parked car, down an alley, into a shop, or into a crowd. But this was a long road with no turnings except the end. And the end was visible. There was nowhere for her to go. We looked away only long enough to calm the dog, then looked back, and she was simply not there. That is not how walking works. That is not how distance works. But it happened. After that, I never saw that road in the same way again. During the day, it still looked normal. The church still looked like a church. The road still led where it always led. But at night, especially around that hour, the memory came back. The light in the church, the dark corner, the woman in the cloak, the dog's hackles rising, the blank face passing by, the empty road behind us. Once you have a moment like that in a place, the place changes. It keeps the memory even when everything looks ordinary again. I do not know what we saw. Maybe it was a real woman in a strange series of coincidences. Maybe she had some reason to be there and some way to vanish that we never noticed. Maybe the church light was unrelated. But deep down, I do not think so. The whole thing felt connected. The wrong light in the closed church, the woman coming from the darkness near it, the dog's fear, the way she did not respond, and her impossible disappearance all felt like pieces of the same thing. All I know is that me and my wife went for a walk because we could not sleep, and our dog reacted to a cloaked woman near a church that should have been closed. She walked past us with a pale face and a blank expression, ignored our apology, and vanished from a long, empty road in the few seconds we looked away. The next day, the church confirmed they had been closed all night and were concerned that the lights had been on. I still cannot explain it, and I do not think I ever will. Back in high school, my friend and I used to spend every Friday night out at different car club scenes. That was just what we did. It became part of our routine, almost like a weekly ritual. We were young, had energy, and loved being around cars, people, noise, and that late-night feeling that comes with being out when most of the world is already asleep. We would go from one spot to another, hang around parking lots, talk to people, check out cars, listen to engines, and waste hours doing what felt important to us at the time. Some nights were exciting, some were boring, but we always stayed out late. By the time we headed back, the streets were usually quiet, and the whole night had that strange stillness that only comes after 2 in the morning. One night, we got back to my friend's house around 2 or so in the morning. It had been a normal night up until then. Nothing strange had happened while we were out, and we were not scared or on edge when we came back. We were just tired in that half-awake way people get after being out late, where your body is ready to crash, but your mind is still replaying the night. The neighborhood was quiet when we pulled in. It was a clear night, with no bad weather, no wind, no rain, and no heavy clouds making everything feel darker. It was just still. The kind of quiet that feels peaceful at first, but if you pay too much attention to it, it starts to feel empty. My friend lived on a flat, straight road. That detail matters, because it was not the kind of street where someone could easily sneak up without being seen. There were no sharp curves right near the house, no thick woods along the road, and no odd corners where a person could appear out of nowhere. From his driveway, you could see a long way in both directions. If someone was walking up or down the street, you would see them coming. If a car turned onto the road, you would notice the headlights. If someone was on the sidewalk, there was no real place for them to hide. It was a normal suburban neighborhood, open and clear, which is part of what made what happened so strange. We were not ready to go to sleep yet, so instead of going inside right away, we sat on the trunk of his car in the driveway. We were just chilling, talking about the night, probably going over the cars we had seen and the people who had been there. It was one of those quiet conversations that happens after a long evening out, when the excitement has faded, but you still do not want the night to end. We were comfortable. His house was right there behind us. The neighborhood was familiar. There was no reason to feel unsafe. To our right, his neighbor had one large magnolia tree in the front lawn. It was a big, heavy-looking tree, the kind that has a wide shape and thick leaves that can create deep patches of darkness underneath it. There were no lights on it, no decorations, no porch light shining directly into it in a way that could make strange shadows. There was nothing moving around it that we could see. It was just a tree in the neighbor's yard, something we had probably seen dozens of times before without giving it any thought. During the day, it would have looked completely normal. At night, with the rest of the neighborhood still and quiet, it looked darker, but not enough to scare us at first. As we sat there talking, I caught something move to our right. It was one of those movements you do not fully process right away. Your eyes notice it before your brain can explain it. I was not staring at the tree. I was not looking for anything. I just caught motion from the corner of my eye, something dark shifting where nothing should have been shifting. At first, I probably thought it was just a shadow, maybe a branch moving, maybe my eyes playing tricks on me. But then I focused just enough to realize there was something standing under that magnolia tree. It was a dark figure. The shape was tall, too tall, easily 8 feet or so, maybe more, standing beneath the tree like it had always been there, and we had only just noticed it. It did not look like a normal person. Even in the darkness, the size was wrong. A person standing under that tree would have had a certain shape, a head, shoulders, a body, some detail you could understand. This thing was more like a black shape cut out of the night. It was darker than the shadows around it, which sounds impossible, but that is how it felt. The tree had darkness under it, but the figure was darker still, like something standing inside the shadow rather than being made by it. At the exact same time, I felt my friend tense up next to me. That is the part that confirmed I was not imagining it. If I had been alone, I might have convinced myself later that I saw a branch move, or that my eyes made a shape out of nothing. But my friend reacted at the same moment. I felt his body stiffen beside me on the trunk of the car. He had seen something, too. Neither of us spoke right away. We both stayed sitting there, facing forward, trying not to move. It was like our bodies understood before our mouths did that something was very wrong. The silence around us felt different then. A minute earlier, it had just been a quiet neighborhood at night. Now it felt like the whole street was holding still. No cars came by. No doors opened. No dog barked. No one called out from a porch or stepped outside. The flat, straight road that had made the area feel open suddenly made it feel exposed. There was nowhere for us to hide outside. We were sitting in the driveway, out in the open, with the house behind us and that tall, dark figure under the tree to our right. It was close enough for us to see it, but far enough that we could not make out details. And somehow, that made it worse. Neither of us wanted to look directly at it. That is hard to explain, but it was one of the strongest feelings of the whole experience. It was not just that we were scared to see what it looked like. It felt like looking at it would be a mistake, like giving it our full attention might invite something. We both stayed facing forward, not turning our heads toward the tree, even though we knew it was there. We had both seen enough from the corner of our eyes to know. There was no curiosity in that moment, no teenage bravery, no urge to get closer and prove we were not afraid. Something in us said not to look, not to investigate, not to challenge it, just stay still and leave. For what felt like an eternity, neither of us said a word. In reality, it might have only been a few seconds, but fear stretches time. I remember sitting there with the hair on the back of my neck standing up, my whole body tight, trying to listen for movement. I wanted to know if it was coming closer, but I also did not want to know. I kept waiting for a sound from the tree, a footstep, a branch cracking, breathing, anything, but there was nothing. It just stood there. That stillness was almost worse than movement. A person would shift, step, cough, or do something human. This thing was just present, silent and tall beneath the magnolia tree. Then my friend quietly asked me, while still looking straight ahead, "Did you just see something over there?" He did not say it loudly. He did not turn to look at me. His voice was low, controlled, and scared. He already knew the answer, but he needed me to confirm it. I whispered, "Yeah." That one word changed the whole situation. Now it was not just a weird thought in either of our heads. We had both seen it. We were both aware of it. We were both scared, and neither of us had any interest in proving what it was. There was no conversation about going over there. No joke. No attempt to be tough. My friend asked if I was ready to go inside. I said, yeah. We moved carefully. We got up from the trunk of the car, trying not to make a scene, trying not to run, even though everything in us wanted to. Neither of us wanted to look over at that tree. That is another thing I still remember clearly. Usually, when people are scared, they want to look at the thing that scared them, even if only to make sure it is not following. But we did not. It felt like turning our heads would be dangerous. So we got up and briskly walked inside, not looking back, not saying anything, just getting through the driveway and into the house as quickly as we could without breaking into a full run. Once we were inside, the feeling changed, but it did not disappear right away. The house felt safer because there were walls and doors between us and whatever had been under that tree. But my body was still reacting. My heart was racing, and I could still feel that cold fear on the back of my neck. We did not rush to the window to check. We did not grab a flashlight and go outside. We did not wake anyone up and say there was something in the yard. We just went inside because that was the only thing that felt right. Something had told both of us that the best thing we could do was not engage. That is the creepiest part to me. Not just that we saw a dark figure, not just that it looked 8 feet tall, not just that it was standing under a magnolia tree in a quiet neighborhood at 2 in the morning. The creepiest part is that we both had the same instinct at the same time. Do not look too closely. Do not investigate. Just go inside. It felt almost like a warning, but not one that came in words. It came from somewhere deeper. Some old part of the body that knows when something is wrong before the mind can explain it. I have thought about that night many times since then. I have tried to come up with normal explanations. Maybe it was a shadow. Maybe the tree made a shape that looked like a person. Maybe someone really was standing there. Maybe a tall person or someone on something had been under the tree for some reason. Maybe our eyes exaggerated the height because it was dark. Maybe we were tired from being out late, and the combination of darkness, silence, and imagination created something out of nothing. Those are all possible, and I understand why someone would suggest them. But the problem is that both of us reacted at the same moment. Both of us saw something. Both of us felt that same pressure not to look. And the figure did not fit the surroundings. There were no lights on the tree to create some strange moving shadow. There was no wind moving branches in a dramatic way. The street was flat and visible in both directions, so if someone had walked up to that tree, we should have seen them before they were just there. And if it had been a person, what were they doing standing silently under a neighbor's magnolia tree at 2 in the morning in a quiet residential area, not moving, not speaking, not reacting? The height is what stays with me. 8 feet is not normal. Even if we misjudged it, the figure felt too tall to be a regular person. It had a presence that made the area around it feel wrong. It was not just a dark spot in the yard. It felt like something aware, something watching, something that had noticed us at the same time we noticed it. I cannot prove that, but that was the feeling. The air changed the moment we saw it. I can still remember the way my friend's body stiffened beside me. That small physical reaction is as clear in my memory as the figure itself. It told me I was not alone in what I was seeing. His quiet question, "Did you just see something over there?" still plays in my head when I think about that night. There was fear in the way he asked it, but also restraint. Neither of us wanted to say too much. Saying too much would have made it more real. We kept our voices low, almost like we were afraid it would hear us. That was another strange part. We were teenagers, and teenagers are not always careful. We had spent the night around cars, noise, and people. We probably liked to act tougher than we were. On any other night, if we thought we saw something weird in the yard, we might have grabbed a flashlight, gone over there, laughed, or dared each other to check it out. But this was different. There was no daring, no joking, no showing off. Whatever was under that tree stripped all of that away instantly. We were not trying to impress each other. We were just trying to get inside. I do not remember what happened afterward in detail. I do not remember if we talked about it much once we were in the house, or if we just tried to push it aside. But I know I never forgot it. Some memories fade, but that one stays sharp because of the feeling attached to it. The neighborhood was so quiet. The road was so open. The tree was so still. And then that dark figure was there, tall and silent, under the magnolia tree with no reason to be there. Even now, when I think about it, I can feel the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I can feel the trunk of the car under me, the cool night air, my friends sitting beside me, the silence of the street, and that dark shape in the corner of my vision. I can feel the moment when both of us realized we were seeing the same thing. I can feel the decision we made without needing to discuss it. Go inside now. I do not know what that figure was. Maybe it was a person. Maybe it was a shadow. Maybe it was something else entirely. I am not going to pretend I have an answer. But I know that both of us saw something under that tree, something tall and dark and wrong enough that neither of us wanted to look at it directly. And whatever instinct told us not to investigate, I am glad we listened. That is the part that still gets me. It did not feel like fear alone. It felt like something in us knew that looking closer would be a mistake. My friend lived in the middle of nowhere. That is not an exaggeration. His place was far enough out that it took about 15 minutes of driving just to reach the nearest municipality, and even that place was very small. It was not like being outside a big city where there are still gas stations, traffic lights, shops, and neighborhoods nearby. This was real countryside. The kind of place where the roads are dark at night, Houses sit far apart, and once you are away from the few homes scattered around, there is almost no light at all. At night, the area felt empty in a way that could be peaceful or creepy depending on your mood. During the day, it was just quiet and open. But in the middle of the night, it felt like the world had been turned off. We were driving one night, and it was dark. I cannot remember the exact time, but it was probably somewhere between 1 and 3 in the morning. At that hour, there was no reason for anyone else to be out there unless they lived nearby or were passing through. The roads were quiet, and the countryside around us was almost completely black. There were a few houses here and there, but not many, and their lights were far apart. Most of the time, the only real light came from the car itself. The headlights showed the road ahead, and everything beyond that faded into darkness. There were no streetlights, no big buildings, no traffic, no signs of a busy world nearby. We were just driving like normal. There was no strange feeling before it happened. We were not talking about ghosts, UFOs, or anything that would put those ideas in our heads. It was just a late-night drive through an empty place. The kind of drive where you are mostly focused on the road because there is not much else to see. The darkness outside the windows felt deep, and every now and then we would pass a house or a patch of trees, but for the most part, the night looked the same in every direction. Then, suddenly, something flew over the car. It happened so fast that my brain almost did not understand what I had seen. 1 second, the sky and road around us were dark and empty, and the next second, there was this vast, round object crossing over us. It was low enough and close enough that we both reacted at the same time. It did not feel like something far away in the sky. It felt like something had passed directly above the car, close enough to make us both look up and say something almost at the same moment. It had lights on it, which is the only reason we could see it clearly enough to know it was there. Without those lights, it probably would have been just a dark blur, or maybe we would not have noticed it at all. But because there was nothing else nearby making light, the lights on it stood out. The object itself seemed round, or at least round from the angle we saw it. It was not shaped like a plane, not in any way I could recognize. It did not look like a helicopter either. It was fast, extremely fast, and the whole thing was over almost before we could react. Both of us said something like, "What the hell was that?" at almost the same time. That was the first thing that made it clear we had both seen the same thing. It was not one of those moments where one person catches something in the corner of their eye and the other person misses it. We both saw it. We both reacted instantly. There was no delay, no time for one of us to influence the other. It flew over the car, and we both knew something had just happened that did not fit the normal world around us. At first, we tried to rationalize it right away. That is what most people do when something strange happens. Your mind does not want to jump straight to impossible answers. So it starts looking for normal ones. Maybe it just looked close to the ground, but was actually higher up. Maybe it was a plane, and the darkness made the distance hard to judge. Maybe we were seeing it from an odd angle. Maybe it was someone flying a drone. Maybe it was some kind of aircraft we did not recognize. We started throwing explanations around almost immediately because the alternative was admitting we had no idea what had just passed over us. But the more we talked through those explanations, the less sense they made. If it was a plane, it was flying in a strange place and at a strange altitude. There were no airports nearby. There were no known flight paths in that area. At least not ones that would make sense for something flying that low in the middle of the night. Planes usually have a certain way of moving, and even when they are fast, they do not just shoot over a car at what feels like extremely low height and then vanish behind trees in a few seconds. If it had been higher up, maybe we could have mistaken the speed, because distance can be tricky at night. But the way it crossed over us made it feel close, very close. If it was a drone, that explanation had its own problems. At the time, drones were not what they are now. This was not a place where you would expect someone to be flying a fancy high-speed drone in the middle of nowhere at 2 in the morning. It was also way too fast for what we thought a normal drone could do, unless it was some kind of advanced or military technology. But that raised even more questions. Why would someone be flying military tech over a random countryside road in the middle of the night? There were no military bases anywhere near us. There was no reason for it to be there, and no reason for it to be flying so low. The speed was the part that bothered me most. The whole thing took maybe 3 seconds. That was all. It came over the car, flew in a straight path, disappeared behind some trees, and then it was gone. If it had been more than 50 meters above us, it would have had to be moving at an insane speed for it to cross our view the way it did. And if it was lower than that, then it was flying very low over a road in the countryside at night, which also made no sense. Either way, the explanation did not feel normal. The distance, speed, and location all worked against each other. We kept driving, still trying to understand it. The object had disappeared behind some trees, so naturally we expected to maybe see it again once we passed them. If it was flying in a straight line, we thought maybe we would catch another glimpse of its lights through the branches or on the other side. But after we passed the trees, there was nothing. No lights in the sky. No sound that we could connect to it. No distant shape. No sign of where it had gone. It was as if it had crossed over us, gone behind the trees, and simply disappeared from the world. The area made the whole thing stranger because there was almost nothing out there. In a city, you might see drones, aircraft, bright signs, reflections, or strange lights coming from buildings, cars, or towers. In the countryside, far from airports and major activity, there are fewer distractions. When something lights up and moves overhead, it stands out. There were no other lights nearby except a few houses here and there, and those were still and grounded. This thing was moving through the air, fast and low. There was no way to mistake it for a porch light or a reflection from a window. We also did not hear anything that matched what we saw. Maybe there was some sound, but if there was, it was not the kind of loud engine noise you would expect from something moving that fast and close. That made it even harder to understand. A plane or helicopter flying low should be loud. A drone might make a buzzing sound depending on size and distance. But what I remember most is the speed and the visual shock of it, not a clear sound. It was there and gone before we could even process it. After it happened, the road felt different. A few minutes earlier, it had just been a dark country road late at night. Now it felt exposed, like the sky above us was no longer empty. We were looking around more carefully, checking the windshield, the side windows, the mirrors, the gaps between trees. The darkness that had seemed normal before now felt like it could hide anything. We kept asking each other what it could have been, but neither of us could make an explanation stick. I think what made it so unsettling was how short the event was. If it had lasted longer, maybe we could have studied it, watched its direction, noticed its shape better, or figured out whether it made a noise. But it was only around 3 seconds. That is enough time to see something and react, but not enough time to understand it. By the time your brain starts saying, "What is that?" it is already gone. Then you are left with the memory and nothing else. No video, no photo, no second look. Just two people in a car asking each other what they saw. We both knew it was not something ordinary, at least not ordinary in any way we could recognize. We tried the simple answers first. Plane, drone, maybe a low-flying aircraft. Maybe some kind of optical illusion. Maybe something that looked close but was actually far away. But every idea had a problem. There were no airports, no flight paths, no military bases, no reason for a fancy drone to be flying out there at that hour, no other lights around to create a reflection, no sign of it after it passed the trees. And the speed was just too strange. Maybe it was some kind of private drone, and maybe the person controlling it was somewhere nearby. That is possible in theory. But again, the location makes that hard to believe. This was not near a town with people out testing equipment. It was the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. If someone had been flying something that fast, that low, and with lights on it, why there? Why over that road? Why at that exact time? And why did it vanish so completely after the trees? Maybe it was a small aircraft flying lower than it should have been. Maybe someone was doing something illegal or unsafe. But if that were the case, we should have seen more of it, or heard more of it, or found some sign that aircraft used that area. There was nothing. No airport nearby, no base, no explanation for why it would be there, and the shape still did not look right. It looked round, fast and round, with lights. Maybe our eyes misunderstood what we saw. Night can distort distance and speed. When there is no reference point, an object can seem closer or faster than it is. I know that. In the dark countryside, with no buildings or streetlights to compare against, it is easy to misjudge things in the sky. But we both had the same immediate reaction because it felt close and low. It did not look like a faraway object moving slowly across the sky. It looked like something crossing directly over the car. That is the part I cannot shake. If it had just been a strange light far away, I could probably let it go. People see strange lights in the sky all the time. Most of them turn out to be planes, satellites, drones, or something explainable. But this was not just a light in the distance. It was an object, close enough to feel like it passed over us, with lights visible on it. Moving so fast, the entire encounter lasted only seconds. Then it went behind trees and never came back into view. Afterward, we kept talking about it, trying to sound rational, but we were both confused. Neither of us wanted to jump straight to UFO in the dramatic sense, but unidentified is exactly what it was. We did not know what it was. We still do not. I am not saying it was aliens or anything like that. I am saying we saw a fast, round, lit object fly over our car in a remote area where it had no obvious reason to be, and every normal explanation we came up with felt weak. It still bothers me because it happened so quickly and left no evidence. If there had been other people around, maybe someone else would have seen it. If we had been near an airport, we could have checked flight patterns. If it had made a sound or left a trail or appeared again after the trees, maybe we could have narrowed it down. But there was nothing. Just those few seconds. The lights, the speed, the round shape, and the way both of us reacted at the same time. The thing disappeared behind some trees while flying in a straight path. And after we passed those trees, it was nowhere to be seen. That detail still makes no sense to me. Something moving in a straight line should continue in a straight line. If it was a plane or drone, we should have seen its lights again. If it dropped lower, we should have seen some glow or movement. If it turned, maybe we would have noticed a change in direction. Instead, it simply vanished from view and never returned. I do not know what we saw that night. I wish I did. It is one of those experiences where I would honestly love a practical explanation because I am very interested in knowing what it could have been. Maybe someone with knowledge of aircraft, drones, military tech, or unusual optical effects could offer something that fits. But from where we were, in that car, on that dark road in the middle of nowhere, it felt impossible to explain. All I know is that my friend and I were driving through the countryside at around 1 to 3 in the morning, far from any real town, airport, flight path, or military base, when a fast, round object with lights flew over the car. It was close enough that we both reacted instantly, fast enough that the whole thing lasted only about 3 seconds, and strange enough that neither of us could make sense of it. It disappeared behind some trees in a straight path, and when we passed the trees, it was gone. If anyone can explain what that could have been, I would genuinely like to know, because after all this time, I still have no idea. When I was 19, I saw what looked like a red dot in the sky. I was driving my truck at the time, just heading home like it was any other night. I do not remember thinking anything strange was about to happen. It was one of those ordinary drives where your mind is half on the road and half on getting home, especially when you are tired. At that age, I spent a lot of time driving around, and a red light in the sky was not something I immediately thought much about. It caught my attention because it looked a little odd, but it was not enough at first to make me panic or pull over. It was just a small red dot above me, hanging there or moving in a way I could not fully understand in the moment. The sky was dark enough that the red dot stood out. It was not like looking at a plane with normal blinking lights, at least not from what I remember. It did not have the usual pattern of aircraft lights, and it did not look like a tower or anything fixed in place. It was just there, small and red, and my eyes kept wanting to go back to it, even though I was trying to focus on the road. When you are driving at night, any unusual light in the sky can pull your attention for a second. You tell yourself not to stare because you need to watch where you are going, but your brain still notices it and tries to figure it out. I remember seeing it and wondering, maybe only for a moment, what it was. Then, all of a sudden, there was a flash. It was not just a flash somewhere in the distance. It felt like the flash hit my eyes. 1 second, I was looking at the road and noticing that red dot, and the next, bright light exploded across my vision. It happened so fast that I did not have time to react. There was no warning sound before it, no slow buildup, no time to think. Something is coming. It was just instant, a blast of light, like my eyes had been filled with white. For a moment, I could not see anything at all. At the same time, my whole truck shook. It was violent enough that I knew something had hit me, or at least hit the truck. This was not a small rock bouncing off the road, not a branch tapping the windshield, not normal road vibration. The whole vehicle jolted, and my body reacted before my mind could understand what was happening. Then I heard the windshield crack. That sound is hard to forget, especially when it happens right in front of your face while you are moving. Glass cracking has a sharp, sickening sound to it, and hearing it while temporarily blinded made the fear 100 times worse. For a few seconds, I could not see where I was going. That was the scariest part in the moment. Whatever had hit the truck was terrifying, but not being able to see the road while still driving was immediate danger. I was temporarily blinded from the flash, and I damn near wrecked because I had no idea exactly where I was. My eyes were trying to recover, but everything was just light, blur, and confusion. I had my hands on the wheel, trying to keep the truck straight, trying not to panic, trying to remember where the road was from the last thing I had seen before the flash. There's a specific kind of fear that hits when you are behind the wheel and suddenly lose vision. You know that even one wrong movement can put you in a ditch, into another lane, into a tree, or into something else before you can stop it. I do not know how long the blindness lasted. It probably was not long in actual time, but it felt long enough. A few seconds is a lifetime when you are driving and cannot see. My heart was pounding, and I was probably gripping the steering wheel too hard. I do not remember if I hit the brakes hard or just slowed down as much as I could while trying to stay in control. I only remember fighting to keep the truck on the road while waiting for my eyesight to come back. Every part of me was tense. I was waiting for impact, waiting to feel the tires leave the road, waiting for something worse to happen. Then my vision started coming back. At first, it was not clear. It came back in pieces, blurry and dark, with spots from the flash still burned into my eyes. I could make out enough to keep going, but I was shaken. I knew something had happened to the truck, but I could not fully inspect it right there. It was dark. I was tired, and I just wanted to get home. I was only about 5 minutes away, so once I could see again, I kept driving. Looking back, maybe I should have pulled over right away. Maybe I should have gotten out and checked the damage. But in that moment, I did not have the energy or the visibility to make sense of anything. I was more focused on getting home without crashing. The rest of the drive felt unreal. I kept replaying the flash in my mind. I kept thinking about the red dot. I kept listening to the truck, wondering if something was wrong under the hood, wondering if the windshield would crack more, wondering what had hit me. It is strange how quickly an ordinary night can turn into something you cannot explain. 5 minutes earlier, I had just been driving home. Now I was trying to understand why my truck had shaken like it had been struck by something from above, and why my windshield had cracked after a flash of light from the sky. When I got home, I parked the truck. It was still dark, and I could not see much outside. I was tired as hell, and I did not feel like trying to inspect the damage with no proper light. I knew the windshield was cracked, and I knew the truck had been hit hard, but I could not fully tell what I was looking at in the dark. So I left it for the morning. That might sound strange, but at the time I was exhausted and still rattled. I had made it home alive, and that was all I could process. I went inside, probably still trying to convince myself that there would be some normal explanation when the sun came up. When I woke up in the morning, I went out to check the truck. That was when I realized how serious it had been. The hood had a huge dent in it. Not a little ding, not a scratch, not something that looked like road debris had bounced up from another vehicle. A huge dent. Something had hit the hood with real force. Seeing it in daylight made my stomach drop because it showed me that whatever happened the night before was not just in my head. The flash, the shake, the cracked windshield, all of it had left physical proof. Something had struck the truck hard enough to dent the hood badly. Then I noticed the paint. There was a section about 6 inches across where the paint had been burned off. Not scraped off, burned off. The metal underneath was discolored, blue and purple, the way steel looks when it has been heated. That was the part that made it impossible to explain as a normal rock or piece of debris. A rock might dent a hood. A piece of metal from the road might crack glass. But what hits a truck with enough heat to burn the paint away and leave the metal looking like it had been heated? The color of the metal was not normal damage. It looked like something extremely hot had touched it. I checked the windshield too. It had a small section where the outer layer of glass was gone and the plastic layer in the middle was melted. That detail still bothers me when I think about it. Windshields are layered. They are made to crack and hold together because of that plastic layer inside. Whatever hit my truck did not just crack it from impact. It damaged it with heat. It took off part of the outer glass and melted the layer underneath. That is not the kind of thing you expect from gravel, a falling branch, or something kicked up from the road. It had both force and heat. That was when the red dot in the sky came back into my mind even stronger. I had seen the red dot before the flash. Then something flashed bright enough to temporarily blind me, shook the truck, cracked the windshield, dented the hood, burned paint off a 6-inch section, discolored the metal, and melted part of the windshield's inner layer. The sequence made me think it had to have come from above, and the only explanation I could come up with was that it had been a meteor. I know that sounds wild, but I have never been able to come up with anything else that fits. A meteor would explain the light. It would explain the heat. It would explain the speed and energy. It would explain why it seemed to come from the sky. Small meteors can burn as they fall, and if a piece made it low enough and hit something, I can imagine it leaving the kind of damage I saw. I am not an expert, but when I looked at that hood and windshield, I could not think of any normal road hazard that would do that. It was not just impact damage. It was burned, heated, melted damage. The idea that a meteor might have hit my truck is both incredible and terrifying. People talk about meteors like they are things you watch from far away, streaking across the sky during a shower. You make a wish, or you point them out to someone, or you think about how beautiful the sky is. You do not expect one to hit your vehicle while you are driving home. You do not expect something from space, even a small piece, to come down at the exact time and place where you happen to be on the road. The odds feel impossible, but standing there looking at the damage, the impossible explanation felt more reasonable than anything else. I have thought about other possibilities over the years. Maybe something fell off another vehicle. Maybe it was a piece of machinery, metal, or debris from the road. But I do not remember another vehicle right there causing it. And debris from the road would not explain the flash in the sky or the heat damage. Maybe something electrical happened, like a power line or some kind of arc. But I do not remember being near anything that would explain that either. Maybe someone threw something, but what could a person throw that would create a flash? Burn paint, heat the metal blue and purple, crack the windshield, and melt the plastic layer? None of it works. The heat is the part that keeps me coming back to the meteor idea. Metal turning blue and purple from heat is not subtle. Burned paint is not subtle. Melted windshield plastic is not subtle. Something extremely hot hit the truck. And it hit with enough energy to dent the hood and crack the windshield. A normal object might do one of those things. A hot object might burn. A hard object might dent. But something that is hot, fast, and powerful enough to do all of it is not common. That is why I have never been able to let go of the meteor explanation. I also think about how close it came to being much worse. If the object had hit a little higher, a little lower, or a little farther back, it could have gone through the windshield, hit me, or caused me to lose control completely. I was temporarily blinded and nearly wrecked as it was. If there had been another car coming, a curve in the road, a ditch, a tree, or anything else in the wrong place, the story might have ended very differently. The dent and burned paint were shocking in the morning, but the scariest part is that I had been inside the truck when it happened, moving down the road, unable to see for those few seconds. At the time, I was just tired and trying to get home. I did not have the sense to stop and really process it. But later, looking at the damage in daylight, I understood that something powerful had happened inches away from me. There is something deeply unsettling about seeing evidence after the fact. During the event, everything happened too fast. Flash, shake, crack, blindness, panic, then keep driving. In the morning, the damage was still there, calm and silent, waiting for me to understand it. The truck was proof that the night before had not been a dream or an exaggeration. I wish I had taken more photos or had someone examine it properly. I wish I had been able to find the object or fragment that hit the truck, if there was one. Maybe it bounced away. Maybe it broke apart. Maybe it was small and ended up somewhere on the road where I would never find it. If it really was a meteorite, I will always wonder if a piece of it was left behind. But at the time, I was 19. I was not thinking like that. I was just trying to understand what had happened to my truck and why it looked like something had hit it with fire. The memory has stayed with me because it started with something so small, a red dot in the sky. That is all. If I had looked away, I might not have even noticed it. Then came the flash, the violent shake, the cracked windshield, and the fear of driving blind. Then came the morning discovery, the huge dent, the burned paint, the blue and purple metal, the missing outer layer of windshield glass, and the melted plastic inside. All from something that seemed to come out of nowhere. I know people might doubt it. I would probably doubt it too if someone told me the same story. It sounds like something you would hear and immediately try to explain away. But I saw the red dot. I felt the truck shake. I lost my vision for those seconds. I saw the cracked windshield. And in the morning, I saw the damage with my own eyes. Whatever it was, it hit my truck with heat and force unlike anything I have ever experienced. I still believe it had to have been a meteor. I have never come up with anything else that could explain the flash, the impact, the burned paint, the heated metal, and the melted windshield layer all at once. Maybe someone who knows more about meteors, aircraft debris, electrical arcs, or strange road incidents could suggest something else. But from what I saw and what happened, a meteor is the only thing that makes sense to me. When I was 19, I saw a red dot in the sky, and moments later, a flash blinded me. My truck shook and my windshield cracked. I almost wrecked because I could not see. I made it home, too tired and blind in the darkness to inspect everything properly. The next morning, I found a huge dent in the hood, a burned 6-inch section where the paint was gone, metal turned blue and purple from heat, and a section of windshield where the outer glass was gone and the plastic layer had melted. Something hit my truck that night, and whatever it was, it came with serious heat and energy. To this day, the only explanation I have is that a meteor hit me while I was driving.
Quick pause, then we're right back. A lot of people watch one story and leave, but some stick around. They hit subscribe and come back every night. If you want to be one of them, the button's right there. Turn on the bell too, so you never miss a new one. That's it. Let's get back to the story.
When it's most beautiful, animals are more active. That is one of the reasons I always liked being out on the trail later in the day. There is something different about a forest preserve in the late afternoon and early evening. The light gets softer, the air cools down a little, and everything seems to come alive in a quiet way. After late afternoon rainstorms, you can sometimes see more rainbows than you would expect, stretched across the sky or caught in the wet air above the trees. The trails shine where the rain has washed them clean, leaves drip, puddles reflect the fading light, and the whole place feels fresh. Deer come out to forage when the day starts settling down, and birds begin singing in that busy, beautiful way they do before dark. It can feel peaceful, almost magical, if you were there at the right time. I knew the area pretty well and had been on that bike loop many times before. It was not some wild, endless wilderness, but it was still big enough to feel far away from regular life once you were deep in it. One loop was about 4 miles. Long enough to feel like a real ride, but short enough that I could push myself and do more than one if I had the time and energy. I liked the rhythm of it. There were open stretches, wooded sections, wet spots after rain, places where branches fell across the path, and areas where animals were more likely to appear. It was the kind of trail where you learned what to watch for, especially if you rode fast. One Halloween, I wanted to get in a workout before a party. I had plans later that night, and I still needed to get ready, but I also wanted to ride. I figured I could do it if I timed things right. The idea seemed simple. Get a good workout in, go home, clean up, put on my costume, and head out to the party. I did not plan on anything weird happening. It was Halloween, so naturally the whole day already had that spooky atmosphere. But the ride itself was supposed to be normal, just exercise before the fun part of the night. The problem was that I took my time getting my costume prepared. Anyone who has ever tried to get ready for a Halloween party knows how that goes. You think it will only take a few minutes, then suddenly you are adjusting things, looking for missing pieces, checking how it looks, and wasting more time than you planned. By the time I finally hit the trail, the sun was already deep into setting. It was not fully dark yet, but it was getting there fast. That golden late-day light was fading, and the shadows under the trees were starting to stretch together. I told myself it was fine. I had a bright light on my bike, and I knew the trail. I planned to make it a short trip anyway, or at least short enough to still make it to the party. One loop was about 7.4 miles, and I wanted to get in 2 before heading back. That was ambitious with the sun already going down, but I felt confident. I put on some good spooky music, Silent Hill remixes, because it was Halloween, and it felt perfect for the mood. Then I set off down the trail, ready to ride hard and enjoy the darkening forest. At first, it was great. The music made the ride feel cinematic, almost like I had stepped into my own little Halloween movie. The trail ahead was lit by the beam from my bike, and everything outside that light faded into shadow. The air had that late fall feeling, cool but not freezing, and the trees made the path feel enclosed in certain places. Riding at that time of night is a strange mix of peaceful and tense. You feel fast and free, but also very aware that you are not the only thing out there. My bike light was bright, and I needed it. It helped me avoid flooded sections, toads sitting in the path, fallen branches, and most importantly, deer. Deer are beautiful animals, but when you are riding a bike fast in the dark, they can be a serious danger. They are easy to spook, and they are big. In the forested sections, they do not always jump away from the trail right away. Sometimes they get confused and run along the path instead of leaving it. If you are going fast, they can match your speed for a while, and that is not something you want. If you collide with a deer on a bike, it is going to be a mess for both of you. I had dealt with deer on the trail before, so I was used to scanning ahead. My light would catch their bodies or eyes, and I would slow down if I needed to. That night, though, the deer were not out. At least, I did not see any. Instead, I started hearing coyotes. At first, it was just the yipping howl of 1 or 2 somewhere in the distance. Coyotes have a sound that is hard to mistake once you know it. It is not like a dog bark, not exactly. It is sharper, wilder, and more chaotic, especially when several of them start calling together. This was not the biggest forest preserve in the world, but it was fairly close to a chain of other preserves, which eventually led toward a bigger swamp. In late fall, especially if it is a warm night, coyotes can gather in groups and make a lot of noise. I knew that in theory, but hearing them while riding alone in the dark made the knowledge feel very different. Their calls came from somewhere off in the trees, echoing in a way that made it hard to tell how far away they were. Sometimes they sounded distant, then suddenly closer. The forest and open areas bounced the sound around. My music was still playing, and I tried to keep my mind on the ride and the party later, but the coyotes were loud enough to cut through everything. There could be dozens of them, as I found out that night. When they all start up, the sound becomes less like individual animals and more like the forest itself is laughing, crying, and screaming at the same time. I kept riding. I was not exactly scared yet. Coyotes usually do not bother people, and I knew that. But there is a big difference between knowing something logically and hearing a whole group of them calling in the dark while you are alone on a bike. The music that had seemed fun and spooky at the start now felt a little too fitting. The Silent Hill remixes added this eerie layer to the ride, and the trees around me seemed darker with every minute. Still, I pushed on, telling myself I was being dramatic because it was Halloween. About halfway around the bike loop, there was a very long parking area. It was one of those places where during the day, people might park to access the trail, walk dogs, ride bikes, or meet friends. At night, it was mostly empty. I had been riding hard through a wooded section, sprinting a bit, and I was really into the song playing in my ears. When I came out toward the long parking lot, I decided I wanted a coasting break. I had been pushing myself, and the open stretch seemed like a good place to breathe for a moment before continuing. As I pulled into the long parking lot, I could still hear the coyotes crying somewhere. Their sound was there in the background, but my music and thoughts of the party were still in the front of my mind. I was probably thinking about getting home on time, washing off the bugs, finishing my costume, and telling people I had squeezed in a ride before showing up. It still felt like part of a normal Halloween night. Weird sounds in the woods, spooky music, late ride, but nothing beyond that. Then, my bike light swept across the parking area. Dozens of blue eyes lit up in the beam. For a second, my mind refused to understand what I was seeing. The light hit the darkness ahead, and everywhere it landed, eyes reflected back. Not one pair. Not two. Dozens. Blue eyes shining from the dark, low to the ground, spread across the area in front of me. They were still. Completely still. The coyotes were there, gathered in the parking area, and I had ridden straight into them. I had crashed the coyotes' party. Everything stopped. They were still. I was still. The whole world seemed to narrow down to my bike light and all those eyes reflecting back at me. Everywhere I moved the beam, more eyes appeared. It was like the darkness was full of them. I could not even tell at first how many bodies were there, because the light mostly caught the eyes, but that was enough. There were too many, way too many. The sounds I had been hearing were no longer distant. The animals making them were right there. The fear that hit me was immediate and physical. It was not the fun Halloween kind of fear anymore. It was not the kind you get from spooky music or a haunted house. It was survival fear. I knew coyotes usually avoid people, but I also knew I was alone, on a bike, in the dark, surrounded by a group of wild animals that I had surprised. A single coyote is one thing. Dozens of eyes in a dark parking lot is something else. I did not know what they would do if I moved too fast, or if one of them decided to rush me, or if they felt cornered, or if I looked like prey because I was on a bike. I did not yell. I did not try to scare them. I did not keep riding through them. Something in me decided very quickly that I needed to back away. Slowly at first, I started walking my bike back. I kept the light toward them long enough to see the eyes, but I did not want to keep shining it on them too long either. The moment felt frozen and extremely fragile, like any wrong move could turn the entire group from silent observers into a moving mass of teeth and noise. I picked up the front tire of my bike, turned myself around, and then sprinted down the path into another heavily forested section. It was not graceful. It was pure panic and instinct. I did not care about the workout anymore. I did not care about the second loop. I did not care about the party except as a place I desperately wanted to reach later with the story already behind me. I just needed to get away from that parking lot and those eyes. As soon as my light was off them, the coyotes' chatter picked up immediately. That sound behind me was worse than the silence had been. It erupted almost the second I was no longer facing them, all those yips and howls rising together in the dark. It felt like they had been holding still while the light was on them, and the moment I turned away, they came alive again. I did not look back. There was no way I was looking back. The path ahead was dark and wooded, and my bike light bounced wildly as I moved. Branches, leaves, and shadows flashed in and out of view. Every sound behind me felt like something chasing, even if nothing was. I kept going. I do not remember the exact route I took after that, only that I got out of there. The forest that had seemed beautiful earlier now felt hostile and crowded. Every tree looked like it could hide more eyes. Every turn felt too slow. My music, which had felt fun before, now seemed like a terrible choice. Silent Hill remixes in the dark after finding a pack of coyotes on Halloween felt like something I had accidentally done to curse myself. I probably turned it down or stopped noticing it completely because all I could hear in my mind was the sound of those animals starting up behind me. When I finally got home, I was covered in the usual mess from a night ride. Bugs, sweat, dirt, and that anxious feeling you get after a scare when your body is still full of adrenaline. I washed off the bugs, cleaned myself up, and put on my costume for the party. That part felt almost absurd. 1 minute I had been staring at dozens of blue eyes in the dark, thinking I might have made a very serious mistake, and the next I was getting ready for a Halloween party like a normal person. Life can be strange that way. Something frightening happens, and then you still have plans. I went to the party and told the story, but it was not very believable at the time. It was Halloween, after all. Showing up to a party with a story about riding through a dark forest preserve, hearing coyotes howling, and then lighting up dozens of blue eyes in a parking lot sounded too perfect, too spooky, too much like something made up for the holiday. People probably thought I was exaggerating or trying to get attention. It sounded like a Halloween story someone would invent, not something that had literally just happened that night. But it did happen. And that is what made it so strange. It was not a story from years before that had grown in the telling. It was not some campfire tale I borrowed. It was a just today Halloween story, which somehow made it harder for people to believe. It was too on theme. A late ride, spooky music, dark woods, coyotes howling, and then a parking lot full of blue eyes. If I had heard someone else tell it at a party, I might have questioned it too. But I know what I saw. I know the feeling of my bike light hitting those eyes. I know the moment when everything went silent and still. I know the sound that started up behind me when I turned away. Even now, when I think back on it, the image is clear. The long parking area, the darkness, the beam from my bike light sweeping ahead, dozens of blue eyes shining back at me. No movement at first, just watching. That was the worst part. If they had scattered right away, I would have been startled, but maybe not terrified. If they had run off like deer, it would have been over. But they stayed still. And I stayed still, and for a few seconds, it felt like I had interrupted something I was not meant to see. I still ride and still enjoy the outdoors, but that night changed the way I think about quiet forest preserves after dark. The woods are beautiful, especially when the animals are active, but they are not empty. They belong to things that move, gather, hunt, and communicate in ways we only notice when we accidentally get too close. During the day, the trail feels like a place for people. At night, especially on Halloween with coyotes calling from every direction, you are reminded that you are only passing through. I had wanted a workout before a party. I expected 2 loops, some spooky music, and maybe a few deer to avoid. Instead, I rode into a gathering of coyotes in a long, dark parking lot and saw dozens of blue eyes staring back from the beam of my bike light. I backed away, ran for the trees, and did not look back when their chatter exploded behind me. Then I went home, cleaned up, put on my costume, and went to the party with a story no one really believed because it sounded too perfect for Halloween. But perfect timing or not, it happened exactly like that. Growing up, we lived in this big house out in the country. It was beautiful, the kind of house that looked impressive from the outside and felt almost too large for a normal family once you were inside it. It had space, quiet, and that open country feeling that people sometimes dream about when they live in the city. But the reason we could afford it was because it was so far away from everything. We were not close to town, not close to busy streets, and not close to the kind of noise and light that makes a place feel connected to the rest of the world. During the day, that distance could feel peaceful. At night, it could feel like the house was sitting completely alone in the dark. My parents always described me as having an overactive imagination when I was a child. I heard that a lot growing up. If I had a strange dream, saw something in the corner of my eye, or got scared at night, the explanation was usually that I was imagining things. To be fair, I did have crazy nightmares as a kid. I also had moments where my eyes would play tricks on me, especially in the dark. Shadows looked like people. Clothes on chairs looked like figures. And little noises in the house felt bigger than they probably were. So over time, I started to accept that maybe I just scared myself more easily than other kids. If I saw something frightening, I learned to doubt myself first. That house made it easy for a child's mind to wander. It was big, and at night it had all the little sounds old country houses seem to make. Floors creaked, walls settled, pipes clicked. Wind moved around the outside in ways that sometimes sounded like footsteps or whispers. Because we lived far from the city, the nights were darker than what most people are used to. There were no streetlights shining through every window, no constant traffic, no neighbors close enough to make you feel like someone was nearby. When the lights were off, parts of the house became completely black, and every hallway felt longer. One night, I woke up thirsty and went to get water from the dispenser on our fridge. It was the middle of the night, and I did not want to wake anyone up. So I did not turn on any lights. That was normal for me. I knew the house well enough to move through it in the dark, at least from my room to the kitchen. I probably moved slowly, feeling my way through the familiar spaces, trying not to bump into anything or make noise. The whole house was asleep. Everything was quiet, except for the small sounds that always seem louder when you are the only one awake. The kitchen was dark when I got there. Not dim, dark. The kind of dark where you can make out the shapes of counters and appliances only because you already know where they are. I found the fridge by memory and held my glass under the water dispenser. I pushed the glass against it, and the little light on the dispenser kicked on. That small light was enough to show me what was standing just to the left of the fridge. There was an old woman there. She was standing so close that for a second my mind could not understand what I was seeing. The little dispenser light was not bright, but it lit her enough to show her face and shape. She looked frail, thin in a way that seemed almost wrong, with long, stringy hair hanging around her face. Her eyes were sunken, and her face was gaunt, like all the life had been pulled out of it. She was staring right at me, not past me, not down at the floor, right at me. I froze for only a second, but it felt much longer. The glass was still pressed against the dispenser, water probably still running or about to run, and that weak little light held her there in front of me. I remember the shock hitting my body all at once. It was not like seeing a shadow and slowly realizing it looked like a person. It was immediate. There was someone there, an old woman, in the kitchen, in the middle of the night, looking straight at me. I was so scared that I pulled my glass away from the dispenser immediately. The second I did, the light went off, and the kitchen fell back into complete darkness. That made it worse in a strange way. The dark came back so fast that I could no longer see whether she was still there. 1 second, she was visible, and the next, she was hidden. I was standing in the same room where I had just seen her, holding my glass, shaking, and now I had no way to know if she was still beside the fridge or if I had imagined the whole thing. I did not want to turn the light on. I did not want to look again. I did not want to move. My body was telling me to run, but I was also terrified that if I moved too quickly, I would bump into her or feel her next to me. I stood there shaking, trying to convince myself it was my imagination. That was the only explanation I could handle. I kept telling myself I had been half asleep. I had bad dreams all the time. My eyes played tricks on me. The small light must have hit something weird. Maybe a shadow, maybe a coat, maybe something beside the fridge that I had turned into a face. There was no way an old woman was really standing there in our kitchen. There was no way she had been staring at me. There was no way. But telling myself that did not make me less afraid. I had to force myself to move. Every step away from the fridge felt awful because I did not want to turn my back on the spot where she had been. I crept back to my room slowly, trying to be quiet and trying not to look too much into the darkness around me. I felt like if I looked back toward the kitchen, I might see her again. Or worse, see her closer. When I finally got back to my room, I got into bed terrified and tried to go back to sleep. I never said anything about it. Part of the reason was my mom. She was extremely religious and easily frightened, and I knew if I told her I had seen an old woman in the kitchen at night, she would have flipped. She would not have brushed it off casually. She would have been scared, maybe even more scared than I was, and I did not want to deal with that. I also knew that, logically, there was no way the woman was really there. At least, that was what I told myself. The doors had been locked. We were out in the country. No stranger had just wandered into the kitchen and stood beside the fridge in the middle of the night. It did not make sense. So I buried it. As I got older, I convinced myself it had probably been another vivid nightmare. Maybe I had dreamed I got up for water. Maybe I had sleepwalked part of it. Maybe I had been so tired that my brain created an image from shadows and fear. Childhood memories can become strange over time, and because everyone always said I had an overactive imagination, it was easy to file the experience away under that label. I thought about it less and less as the years passed. It became one of those memories that still made me uncomfortable if I let myself focus on it, but not something I believed in completely anymore. I told myself I had imagined it, because that was easier. Then, in my early 20s, I was talking with my older sister. We were reminiscing about different things from when we were growing up, the way siblings do when enough time has passed that childhood feels like another life. We talked about the big house in the country, the weird things we remembered, the good parts, the bad parts, and the strange little details that only people who lived there would know. It was a normal conversation at first. Nothing about it felt heavy or scary. Then she asked me if I had ever seen anything creepy at that big house we grew up in. The question caught me off guard. I did not immediately tell her about the old woman. I had spent so many years convincing myself it was nothing that even then, as an adult, I hesitated. I told her I had imagined plenty of creepy things there, and I asked why she was bringing it up. I expected her to mention a weird sound or a shadow in the hall, something vague that could be laughed off. But that is not what happened. She proceeded to describe a creepy old woman. She said the woman had long, tangled gray hair and an emaciated face. The description hit me like ice water. It was not close in a general way. It was the same. The hair, the face, the way she looked old and thin and wrong. My sister was describing the woman I had seen beside the fridge years earlier, the woman I had never told anyone about, the woman I had spent most of my life trying to convince myself was only a dream. I remember the feeling in that moment. It was like the memory I had buried suddenly stood up in the room with us. For years, I had carried it as something private and probably imaginary. Then, my sister, who had no way of knowing what I had seen, described the same woman. It was chilling in a way I cannot fully explain. The fear I had felt as a child came back, but now it had a new layer to it. It was not just the fear of seeing her. It was the fear of realizing I might not have imagined her at all. I told my sister about that night. I told her how I had woken up thirsty and gone to the kitchen for water. I told her how I had not turned on the lights because I did not want to wake anyone. I told her how the little light on the fridge dispenser came on when I pressed my glass against it. I told her that, in that small glow, I saw an old woman standing just to the left of the fridge, staring right at me. I told her how I pulled the glass away, how the light went out, and how I crept back to my room shaking and terrified. I told her I had never said anything because I thought it had to be my imagination. The fact that we had both seen the same woman changed everything. It was not proof in the way people usually mean proof. We did not have a photo, a video, or some physical evidence. But for me, it was enough to destroy the explanation I had built for myself. I could believe my own child mind had invented something. I could believe I had had a nightmare. I could believe shadows and fear had tricked me. But it was much harder to believe that my sister had independently imagined the same old woman with the same awful features in the same house, and then described her years later without knowing my story. That is the part that still scares me the most. Not just seeing the woman, but spending years believing I had made her up, only to have someone else describe her. It made me wonder how many things from childhood we explain away because adults tell us our imaginations are too active. It made me wonder what else I had dismissed from that house because it was easier to believe I was just a scared kid. It made me wonder if my sister had seen her more than once, or if anyone else in the family had felt something strange but never said anything. I still do not know what the old woman was. Maybe she was a ghost, if that is what you believe in. Maybe she was some kind of memory attached to the house, a figure that appeared to different people at different times. Maybe there is some psychological explanation for both of us seeing something similar, though I have never found one that feels convincing. Maybe the house itself had a way of making people see things. I do not know. I only know that I saw her clearly enough to remember her for years, and then my sister described her without being told. The image of her beside the fridge is still burned into my mind. That small circle of light from the dispenser. The rest of the kitchen swallowed in darkness. The old woman standing just to the left of the fridge, frail and gaunt, with long, stringy hair and sunken eyes, staring at me like she had been waiting for the light to reveal her. It was such a brief moment, but it felt complete. I did not see her move. I did not hear her speak. She did not reach for me. She only stood there and looked at me. Somehow, that was enough. Sometimes I think the worst part was the darkness after I pulled the glass away. If the light had stayed on, maybe I would have seen that she was only a shadow or an object. But once the kitchen went black again, I was left with uncertainty. Was she still there? Had she moved? Had she been real? That darkness made the memory grow larger because it never gave me an answer. It just hit her again. I am older now, and I still have no way to explain it. I know children have vivid imaginations. I know people can dream while half awake. I know fear can make shapes out of darkness. But I also know I never told anyone what I saw. I know I spent years convincing myself it was not real. And I know my older sister, as an adult, described the same creepy old woman from that same house without knowing my story first. To this day, that is one of the scariest things I have ever experienced. Not because anything attacked me, and not because the woman did anything dramatic. It was because I thought I had imagined her. I thought I had safely explained her away. Then, years later, my sister described the exact same woman, and suddenly that childhood memory was real again. Or at least real enough that I could never dismiss it the same way. I still think about that big house in the country sometimes. It was beautiful, and from the outside it probably looked like a dream home. But in my memory, it will always have that dark kitchen, that fridge light, and that old woman standing just to the left of it, staring at a child who had only gotten up for a glass of water. About a month ago, myself and my wife were chilling on the sofa at about 9 p.m. It had been a normal evening, the kind you do not expect to remember for any strange reason. Our daughter had just turned 1, and like most parents, we had way too many pictures and videos of her saved on our phones. We were sitting there showing each other little moments we had captured, laughing at her expressions, replaying clips of her babbling, walking around, grabbing things, or just being herself. When you have a baby, your phone slowly becomes a timeline of their whole little life. And sometimes at night, when things finally calm down, you end up scrolling through those memories together. That was all we were doing. Nothing felt wrong. Nothing felt creepy. It was just a quiet night at home with us on the sofa, enjoying videos of our daughter. While we were going through our phones, we noticed a video that started with our daughter's face in selfie mode. At first, there was nothing unusual about that. Our daughter loves grabbing our phones whenever she gets the chance. She presses the screen with her tiny hands, taps random buttons, swipes across things, and sometimes ends up taking photos or videos without anyone realizing. We have found plenty of accidental pictures before, usually blurry shots of her face, the ceiling, the floor, or half of someone's hand. So when we saw that this video had started with her looking down at the camera, we did not think much of it at first. It just seemed like another cute accident. The video began with our daughter looking down at the phone and babbling to herself. She had that sweet little baby way of talking where none of it really makes sense, but it sounds like she is having a very serious conversation with herself. The phone was lying flat on her mattress, so you could see her face above it and the ceiling behind her. It looked like she had been holding it or playing with it, then somehow left it recording. The angle was low and still, because the phone was not being held by anyone anymore. It was just sitting there on the mattress, recording whatever happened in the room. For the first part of the video, everything was normal. My wife came in and picked our daughter up, probably not realizing the phone was recording. She took her downstairs and forgot the phone there on the mattress. That also was not strange. With a 1-year-old, you are always carrying things, putting things down, forgetting where you left them, then finding them later. The phone stayed behind in the room, still recording from the mattress, pointed upward enough to catch part of the ceiling and the area near the wardrobe. For about a minute, all you could hear was normal family noise from downstairs. You could hear my wife playing with our daughter. You could hear the kids' TV in the background. It was the kind of sound that fills a house when a small child is awake, gentle chaos from another room. From the video, the room itself seemed empty. No one was upstairs. There were no footsteps close to the phone, no voices in the room, nothing moving in front of the camera. It was just a forgotten phone recording a quiet bedroom while life continued downstairs. Then, a strange sound appeared on the recording. At first, we did not understand what we were hearing. It sounded like a voice, but not like any voice that should have been in the house. It was deep, like a male voice, but slowed down in a way that made it sound unnatural. Not just someone talking quietly. Not just sound from the TV downstairs bleeding into the recording. It was much deeper and slower than that, almost like a voice had been stretched out or dragged through something. It had that low, distorted quality that immediately makes your body react before your mind catches up. My wife and I both went quiet when we heard it. The sound was disturbing because there was no one else in the house at the time. It was just my wife and our daughter. I was not there in the room, and no man was upstairs speaking near the phone. The only sounds that should have been on that recording were my wife, our daughter, maybe the TV downstairs, and the ordinary noises of the house. But this voice did not match any of that. It sounded close enough to the recording to feel connected to the room, but strange enough that it did not feel human in a normal way. It made the whole video feel different in an instant. Then, in the top right corner of the video, we saw the wardrobe door move. It opened very slowly. That was the moment my stomach dropped. The wardrobe door did not swing open fast like it had been caught by a draft or bumped by someone. It moved slowly, like someone was carefully pulling it open from the inside, or like it was being pushed by an invisible hand. It opened while the room was supposed to be empty. There were no footsteps, no person crossing the screen, no one reaching into frame. The door just moved. It stayed open for about 5 seconds. Those 5 seconds felt much longer while we watched them. The door sat open, and we stared at the screen, waiting to see something come out or something move behind it. I remember feeling this horrible tension, like the video itself had become a trap. We already knew the moment had happened in the past, but watching it felt immediate. It felt like whatever had opened that door might still be there in the room, even though we were sitting downstairs later, safe on the sofa. The open wardrobe seemed to hold darkness in a way it normally did not. Then, after a few seconds, the door slowly swung closed again. Very slowly. It shut the same way it had opened, with this controlled, unnatural movement. Not a slam, not a wobble, not a quick shift from air pressure. It opened, paused, and then closed as if something had decided it was done. The video continued, but my mind stayed stuck on that movement. My wife and I watched it again. Then again. We kept replaying it because we could not accept what we were seeing. A door had opened and closed in our daughter's room while no one was there, while a strange, deep voice appeared on the audio, and the only reason we knew about it was because our 1-year-old had accidentally started recording. I have thought about it over and over, and I still cannot explain it. Every explanation I try to give myself has a problem. A draft? The wardrobe door moved too slowly and deliberately, and why would it close again the same way? A loose hinge? Maybe. But then why did it wait until that moment, after the strange sound, and why did it stay open before closing? Someone in the room? There was no one else in the house. My wife was downstairs with our daughter. The camera angle did not show anyone entering or leaving. A pet? No. Something falling inside the wardrobe? Maybe, but the door did not jerk or shake. It moved smoothly, like it had been handled. The deep voice made it worse, because if the door had moved without the sound, maybe I could have forced myself to believe it was just a strange mechanical thing. But the sound and the door happened together in the same recording, in an empty room. That combination is what made it feel impossible. The voice seemed to announce the moment, or at least belong to it. It was deep, slow, and wrong. I do not like thinking about it because it still gives me shivers. It did not sound like a friendly voice. It sounded like something that did not belong in a baby's room. That night, I barely slept at all. I was glued to the baby monitor. I kept watching the screen, staring at our daughter's room, checking every shadow, every little change in light, every movement of her blanket or cot. Once you have seen a wardrobe door open by itself on video, you cannot just go to bed normally and tell yourself everything is fine. My daughter was upstairs, sleeping in that room, and I had just seen something happen there that I could not explain. As a parent, fear changes shape when it involves your child. If something scares you personally, you can try to ignore it or leave the room. But when your baby is involved, every instinct in your body turns into protection. I could not relax. I kept telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. There had to be something I was missing. Maybe the door was not closed properly. Maybe the house shifted. Maybe air pressure from another door downstairs somehow caused it. Maybe the audio was distorted from the TV or the phone's microphone. Maybe the whole thing looked stranger because of the angle. I wanted one of those explanations to work. I needed one of them to work. But every time I replayed the video in my mind, I saw the wardrobe door opening slowly, staying open, then closing slowly. And I heard that deep, slowed down voice. Nothing about it felt normal. A few days later, something else happened. I was alone downstairs after putting my daughter to bed. The house was quiet, and I was probably already a little on edge because of the video. Even if you try not to think about something like that, it stays in the back of your mind. You keep listening harder than usual. You look at the monitor more often. You notice small sounds you would normally ignore. That night, I heard tapping noises coming from the baby monitor. At first, I presumed it was just my daughter moving in her cot. Babies make little noises at night all the time. They shift, kick, touch the sides of the cot, drop a dummy, or move a toy. So I looked at the monitor, expecting to see her moving around. But when I looked, I could swear I saw something move across the screen. At the same time, the lighting seemed to change. It happened quickly, and I do not want to exaggerate it into something I cannot prove. But I know what it felt like. Something passed across the screen, or the light shifted in a way that made it seem like something had moved in the room. My heart rate shot up immediately. It was like my body remembered the video before my mind could argue. The tapping, the strange movement, the change in light, and the memory of the wardrobe door all came together at once. For a moment, I was scared to go upstairs. That is the honest truth. But right after that came the stronger thought. I cannot leave my daughter alone if there is something in that room. Fear for yourself disappears when your child might be involved. I got up and ran upstairs. I did not care if it turned out to be nothing. I did not care if I looked ridiculous. I had to check on her. I went into her room and watched her for a while, making sure everything was okay. She was there, sleeping, innocent and unaware of the panic going through me. I stayed with her because I needed to see with my own eyes that she was safe. Nothing obvious happened while I was in the room. There was no figure standing in the corner. The wardrobe door was not swinging open. There was no deep voice. There was just my daughter sleeping, the room quiet around her, and me standing there trying to calm down. But the normalness of the room did not erase what I had seen and heard through the camera. If anything, it made it stranger. The room looked like a normal baby's room, soft and safe and familiar. But on camera, it had shown us something that did not feel normal at all. After that, I started trying to make peace with it in the only way I could. I eventually decided that if it was some kind of spirit, then it must be a good one. I know that might sound like a strange conclusion, but it is what I had to tell myself. My daughter is 1, and we have lived in this house for 3 years. If there was something truly harmful here, surely we would have known before now. Surely something worse would have happened. The only reason we even noticed these strange occurrences was because of the cameras, the accidental phone recording, and the baby monitor. Without those, we might never have known anything was happening. That thought is both comforting and disturbing. Comforting because maybe whatever is there is not trying to hurt anyone. Disturbing because it suggests things might happen in rooms when we are not looking, and we only catch them by accident. That is the part that keeps getting to me. How many times has the wardrobe door moved when no phone was recording? How many sounds have happened when no monitor picked them up? How many shadows or light changes have passed through that room while we were downstairs, unaware? I do not know, and I am not sure I want to know. I tell myself it is a good spirit because the alternative is too frightening. I tell myself maybe it is just curious. Maybe it watches over the room. Maybe it is attached to the house in a harmless way. Maybe it opened the wardrobe door for some reason we cannot understand, but meant no harm. I know there are normal explanations too, and part of me still searches for them. Maybe the door hinge is faulty. Maybe the sound on the video came from the TV distorted by distance and the phone microphone. Maybe the baby monitor glitched. Maybe the lighting change was caused by the camera adjusting exposure. Those are all possible. But the feeling I had while watching that video was not the feeling of seeing a glitch. It was the feeling of seeing something in my daughter's room that should not be there. The video is what makes it so hard to dismiss. If one of us had simply heard a noise and said the wardrobe moved, maybe we could talk ourselves out of it. People mishear things. People get tired. Parents of young children are exhausted, and exhaustion can make everything seem strange. But the phone recorded it. The wardrobe door opened slowly, stayed open, and closed slowly. The strange voice was there too. It was not just a story told from memory. We saw it. Since then, I have been much more aware of the cameras in the room. I watch the monitor more than I used to. I check on my daughter more often. I listen to little taps and creaks differently. Every parent already worries, but this added a new kind of worry I never expected. Not just whether she is sleeping comfortably or whether she needs me, but whether something unseen is sharing that space with her. I hate even writing that, because it sounds dramatic, but that is what the experience did to my mind. Still, nothing bad has happened to her. That is the thing I hold on to. She is happy. She sleeps. She plays in that room. She has lived in this house since she was born, and we have been here for 3 years without anything directly hurting us. Whatever we captured, if it was something beyond normal explanation, it has not shown itself as dangerous. That is why I keep telling myself that if it is a spirit, it is a good one. Maybe it is the only way I can sleep at night. Maybe it is denial. But it helps. Even now, thinking about the video gives me shivers. I can still picture the frame, our daughter's room from the angle of the phone lying flat on her mattress, the ceiling behind her at first. Then the empty room after my wife carried her downstairs, the normal sounds of the kids' TV and my wife playing with her. Then that deep, slow male voice appearing on the audio. Then the wardrobe door in the top right corner slowly opening, staying open for 5 seconds, and slowly closing again. No one else in the house. No one upstairs. No explanation. A few days later, the tapping on the baby monitor and the movement across the screen made it feel like the first video was not just a one-off. Maybe it was only coincidence. Maybe not. I ran upstairs because there was no way I could sit downstairs wondering while my daughter was alone in that room. That is the part that makes the fear so powerful. It is not just a creepy story. It is my child, my baby. And if something is in her room, real or not, I have to be there. So that is where I have landed for now. I do not know what it was. I cannot explain the voice, the wardrobe door, the tapping, or what I thought I saw on the monitor. I have gone over it again and again, and nothing makes full sense. But I have decided, for my own sanity, that if there is something in this house, it is not here to hurt us. It is maybe watching, maybe passing through, maybe curious, maybe even protective. That is what I tell myself anyway, because the other possibilities are not something I want to live with.
So that's where we'll stop tonight. Before you go, remember this. Every story you just heard was real. Real people, real nights, and none of them saw it coming. If that got to you the way it gets to most people, do one thing before you leave. Hit subscribe. I post new stories all the time, and I don't want you to miss them. Take care of yourself. I'll see you next time.